Heroes of Might and Magic turn-based strategy, perhaps some would even call it 4X Lite, is very much rooted in nostalgia of the classics. So a lot of these new games are trying to touch on the old school vibe of our mighty Heroes of Might and Magic 3. This is what the fans want and is apparently very much our first game is going for. Songs of Conquest, at first glance, it's a throwback to 16-bit pixelated graphics. While not entirely HOMM-3-like, but it does a great job of bringing out the nostalgia. I think it looks gorgeous. There is a certain magic, pun absolutely intended, when it comes to these old school art styles. Songs of Conquest has a pretty good single player campaign, and what I quite like is you build your town right on the strategy map. So there's no city view you open up. It gives it this city builder feeling, you're building this town, a very nice, charming, idyllic town. The battles in Songs of Conquest adds an extra dimension, quite literally. It might be 2D, but height matters a ton in this game. Get a unit up a higher hex and you'll get defense and attack bonuses, and a lot of times this is the way you win these tough battles. I like how it makes terrain a lot more important than just a choke point here or an obstacle there. It may make battles feel less unrealistic, at least the way this is implemented in Songs of Conquest, but it also gives it this somewhat puzzle-like quality to battles, especially when you're up against a challenging foe. If you're wondering why did they call this game Songs of Conquest, well, yes, songs are how they narrate the stories. Bards are featured heavily in the armies in this game. It's definitely a quality HOMM-like game that if you're a fan of Heroes of Might and Magic, you've probably heard of it, and you can play it right now as it's released in full. If you're looking for a Heroes of Might and Magic like game that's in a completely different setting, look no further than Heroes of Science and Fiction. Yes, even the name is inspired by the Heroes series, but this game was originally called Silence of the Siren. I think I like the new name better. It's a cool reference with its own twist. Heroes of Science and Fiction is set in a futuristic science fiction setting. I guess that's no surprise, but is a change of setting good enough to make this a great title for HOMM fans? Heroes of Science and Fiction features 4 different spacefaring factions vying for control over the distant Siren system. The game is currently in early access and has 2 single-player campaigns. They are aiming for 1 campaign per faction at launch. While the systems are all similar to Heroes of Might and Magic, this is a completely new setting with different units, different buildings, abilities instead of magic, something new and exciting to immerse yourself into. I don't think it's trying to reinvent anything in this subgenre with something new mechanically, but in terms of taking what is usually a fantasy setting and turning it into something really far out there, like far out there in space, this is something quite unique, which is a good or bad thing depending on what you want. You will instantly understand the equivalent systems in this game, so it's just easy to dive in, but still a lot to learn in terms of the factions and the world itself. There's a certain lightheartedness in the factions and story that doesn't take itself super seriously, at least with this one interesting faction, the communist moles, the Fossorians. I like the theme and the world quite a bit, and I await the full release of this game, which is targeted for Q1 of 2026. For something, well, slightly different and slightly older, since I've been showing you games that are following closely with Heroes of Might and Magic formula, here's a small indie game that's surprisingly fun. It's not going for super in-depth systems, you don't need to go through a lengthy tutorial or guide to play this game. Heroes Hour is a HOMM-like that has the turn-based strategic map and battles that run in real time. Yes, but no, it's not an RTS because this is an auto battler. So while you're not controlling your units directly, you still use spells and summons to turn the tide of battle to your side, and it is very addictive. While this game has been out since 2022, it's received a massive new update this year that did major reworks across the entire game and added a bunch of new things like units and buildings and a lot more. The enemies look oh so cute, but you don't want to kill them? Oh, but you do. Also, they did a collab with the Songs of Conquest devs and added Cecilia, a hero from Songs of Conquest, in this game. I really like these sort of collabs. I'd love to see such things happen in more games. This is the type of game you'll jump in for a short session and maybe you'll realize later it's been more than an hour. Now, if Heroes Hour is a light and simple HOMM-inspired game, Spellforce Conquest of EO is way more complex than that game by a mile. Spellforce is an established RTS game series. Well, it's like an RTS mixed with light RPG, think Warcraft 3. But Conquest of EO is a bit of an offshoot, a different game that's more HOMM-like rather than pure RTS. If you want more complexity in a Heroes of Might and Magic game, this is the one for you. It's got a ton of DLCs released, which means there's a lot more to experience here than if it was a just released game. Actually, it's even closer to a 4X, think Age of Wonders, but there are semblances of HOMM inspiration here, which is why I included it in this list. The developers of Conquest of EO did the deep and glorious fantasy general too, so you know what you're getting into with this one. Battles are a lot more complex with different types of damages, flanking attacks, elemental attacks. Knowing your troops and the magic powers you have will save your arse a lot of time. There's no room for errors most of the time. You only upgrade a single tower that you can float around the map, which means there's no developing multiple settlements, and hero units are not compulsory. Yes, armies can go about on their own, although heroes do still play a big part. It's a deep and intriguing strategy game that's probably not as accessible or easy to get into as Heroes of Might and Magic, but if you have the patience for it and want something of a thinking man's or woman's HOMM-like, well, there's a lot of thinking to be done here. Now, for the games that aren't out yet but are coming soon on the horizon in some shape or form, you want to mark your calendars for this one. Well, at least the ones we know their release dates for. Stormbinders is another HOMM 3-like that's got its aesthetics down clearly in the inspired by old school Heroes game camp. It's being published by strategy game experts Slytherin Games, so you can expect this to be a pretty hardcore strategy gaming experience. It's got all the elements of a HOMM-like down to a T. Battles, town developments, heroes, but Stormbinders adds a very special wrinkle to that classic formula. The weather. Yeah, it's in the title. In Stormbinders, the seasons and the weather plays a bigger role than just window dressing. Expect rivers to freeze during winter, which allow you to take a shortcut over them. Expect fireball spells fizzling out during winter. The dynamic nature of weather and how it affects the strategic and battle maps is truly something game-changing, if I may say so. It adds to the challenge of building armies that could take advantage of the weather. Either they get debuffed or strengthened. Now on paper this might actually be frustrating and a tad bit challenging, not gonna lie. I mean that a stack of powerful units you just built up suddenly gets a penalty because, well, they hate the blizzard or something, could be a tough situation to adapt to. But I'm pretty sure the devs take this into account when it comes to how we'll play the game, and players will have to come up with new strategies to adapt to seasons. If dynamic weather isn't your cup of tea, the developers have clarified that you can turn it off and play on a single weather or season so that you won't experience the wild shifts in gameplay. I don't know why you would want that though, since this is the key unique thing about the game. But yeah, they've accommodated players who wanted the more traditional approach if that's your thing. While everyone seems to be wanting to relive the magic of a Heroes of Might and Magic game, I think Stormbinders look like a breath of fresh air, a slightly different air that hopefully won't be stinky. I've had a love and hate relationship with Disciples, and based on the review scores and reception of the newer games in the series, I believe you, dear viewer, do too. This isn't actually a throwback to the old Disciple games of Disciple 1 and Disciple 2, which, while the later Disciples games stayed true to the dark fantasy theme, the combat and the game in general has drastically changed from those classic old ones. How unfortunate, but Disciples Domination is the follow-up to Disciples Liberation, which is actually a game that actually did a lot better than the disastrous Disciples 3, but it goes further away from the classic HOMM-like gameplay. One thing, exploring the world is in real time. Yes, if this has lost you, you can just skip to the next game in this video. These new Disciples have moved more towards being an RPG game with some elements of HOMM. It has dialogue choices and such, so you know they are kind of making it its own type of game rather than fitting in with this genre. But yeah, it's a pretty big shift, and Disciples Domination is sticking to the real-time world exploration, so that's not going to change. But it will have some improvements or tweaks though, since it is being developed by a new developer, so it's not going to just be a sequel with the same things. We've not got all that much information about Domination, but the devs have said their priority is to focus on improving combat, increasing unit variety, and tactical elements in battles. We've not got more in-depth gameplay trailer of the game, although it was shown at Gamescom this year, there was very little coverage of it. If you want something different, this could be a nice, more RPG-ish take that may interest you when we know a whole lot more about the game. Currently, it is slated to release in 2026. So if this game is unfamiliar to the HOMM fan, let's talk about something that will be absolutely familiar to you. The final game on this list is of course the namesake sequel itself, the new Heroes of Might and Magic, that's going back to the core of what made HOMM 3 great. Olden Era is very much a love letter from the devs, who are big fans themselves, and it shows. It's not drastically changing things, just some improvements here and there from the classic formula, and definitely more of a mix between HOMM 3 like campaign and a HOMM 5 like battles, which I guess is good news for many of you hoping for something like this. I've actually been playing the game, a demo of it, and what I can say is I think it is the closest thing to HOMM 3 that we've got as a modern turn-based strategy game. I will have a video on it real soon, so I'll be sharing more details of it for you. So make sure to subscribe to my channel for more strategy game videos. Definitely it's not the mechanics that is the highlight for Olden Era, at least for me, although I think you'll be surprised to learn there are some new bits. But really, it's the factions and content that's the new stuff I'm really interested in. Some of them a first for the series, so that's something I will highlight in a future video. So are any of these games ready to grab the crown of Heroes of Might and Magic 3, or shall HOMM 3 remain unbeaten? Or some of these games could be a nice diversion, something different. Have you played any of them, or are you looking forward to any of them? Share with us in the comments below. That's a video I did on Heroes of Might and Magic Olden Era, which I'll actually update once I've got more playtime with it. You can watch that video over here. Thanks for watching and farewell, noble friends.